Okay, Namaskar Shubhrata ji, good to have you here. Just a second, I'll unmute you. I think you can unmute yourself now.
Yeah.
Great. So it's 11:31 as promised. We'll start on our time. It's truly a privilege and a pleasure to have you here yet again at City Book Leaders. Today in a very informal, candid discussion, rather a couple of years ago when we hosted you at one of our sessions where you enlightened us towards what the D word is actually. It has nothing to do with the D company we have been talking about, but a similar kind of anxiety and the challenges it could bring to us personally rather than socially. The D word definitely stands for depression, which I think has been the most searched word at this point of time on Google across the globe, specifically because of the COVID. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's truly a privilege to host all of you today in a discussion with Shubhrata Prakash, who is by career. By profession, she's an IRS officer and presently a director at NITI Aayog. She's a mother of two and a wife of a very decorated IPS officer. And also, she is a remarkable author of the book, The D Word. That's exactly what we're going to discuss today. Her book is basically a personal memoir of her own journey into the depression and the anxiety that she faced, despite the fact that she had no idea about it. I came across this book almost 2 years ago, and I read this book while I was traveling to Chandigarh. So all the time that I took, so I left the car, took a metro only to read the book, and by the time I reached airport, I was absolutely engulfed in the book. And when I took the flight to Chandigarh, those 45-50 minutes, I think I finished most of it. It was a quick read, though it was also very enlightening and also gave a lot of introspection, I must say. And I felt very sorry for my own personal situation where after my daughter's birth, my wife would have gone through a similar situation. And most of the times in our society, we don't realize what a female goes through after a childbirth. We think she's just happy, she's crying because she's happy, and a host of emotions that might also come in. But certainly, I think that's where I always feel there's a lack of education, specifically in our system, where we should be told about how our counterparts feel or how other people in the society feel, specifically after such important milestones in life. And the very next thing that I did as soon as I reached my hotel, I called up my wife and I said, sorry, I couldn't understand what you were going through. She said, what happened? Are you reading something? And I said, yes, I just read this book, which is The D Word. With all my notes and scribbles in the book, I gifted it to some more people. This is a remarkable book. And during this pandemic also, we thought we will have her to talk about how do you cope up with a situation like this, because she herself has been a survivor. And she's so passionate that she's now, despite her very busy day job, she also does a lot of consulting to people whom she think can benefit out of her own journey and her own experiences. So, ladies and gentlemen, without much of ado, that's what Shubhrata Prakash to us. Shubhrata, we would love to know of your journey and how you came across this book. What's the content of the book? And what is it that something can take once they are through these pages? I have told my side of the story, but would love to hear it.
Thank you very much, Mohit. And a very good morning to everyone who's listening in now and watching me talk to you about my journey of depression. The book that Mohit has been talking about, I wrote that book during, just give me 1 second. Sorry, these messages keep popping up on my screen. So I wrote the book during a really dark phase of my life with actually no rays of hope anywhere. It was like I was living in a nightmare kind of thing. And the time that I decided to write the book was a part of the same phase. So what happened? How did I reach that place? Because I'm sure you must be wondering, as society believes that depression is something that, it's just a form of sadness, a phase of sadness, and someone who's faced some big life altering event, or someone who's weak and not able to face their life. And there's so many of these myths and misperceptions about depression that keep floating around. So someone who's failed at life gets this thing. But in my case, depression started when most fairy tales end, like, and they rode off into the sunset, or everything went happily ever after, because I had a successful career, I had a successful and very loving husband, and we had just become parents. But probably it was postpartum depression, because when I started writing my book and when I started kind of looking back at where did it all begin, the place that I could point out to really was the first few days after my first delivery. And at the happiest moment of my life, with such a beautiful baby I loved so much, I found myself crying all the time. and every small thing in my environment was getting to me. And there were a lot of times I honestly wish to, I'm very honest about it, I just life didn't feel worth living. So, but anyway, I got better after that. After a couple of months, I got better and I went back to work. I was a full-time mother for a while, looking after my baby. And then I was back to work full-time as an officer. But during the next 4 or 5 years, something was not really right with me. I could feel it because I was just not the person that I used to be. And to tell you a little bit about myself, that I had a very good academic background, and even as a teenager, I used to stay away from home. There was no college hostel either at that time. I used to stay with friends on my own, commute from Patna to Delhi by myself, and there were so many different times when I had faced very tough situations in life. And then after that, after college, after MBA, I was working in Mumbai, living on my own with my friends, managing my day-to-day life. And I was always this very strong person. And in the midst of that, I already had a career with a good job and everything. And I quit that because I wanted to take the civil services, a complete shift in career. And believe me, it takes a lot of courage to do that. So that plus at the age of 27, I was diagnosed with a heart condition and I had to undergo surgery for it. And my UPSC interview was just 15 days after my heart surgery. I did not ask for a postponement. I just went with 12 puncture wounds in my legs, and I just went and I took that interview, cleared it. So I was always this very strong person. This is always how I had seen myself, and this is how society had always seen me. And here I was, a person who was finding it so difficult, just getting up in the morning, going to office, taking care of mundane things like writing reports, taking care of my baby, taking care of the household. It was like my limbs were encased in lead and my mind was completely covered by some kind of a fog. I was not really able to see very clearly through it. But of course, all this didn't happen in a day. Over a period of time, I reached that point. But for the most part, it was something like I would be sitting and I wouldn't really be aware of where I'm sitting. It was like life didn't really feel real. So my job itself is it's a stressful thing, and everyone has job stress. I also had job stress. So after a particularly stressful period in office, I actually went to see a psychiatrist because I honestly believed that there was something wrong with me. And in the midst of all these, like it was almost 5 years after my first child was born. In the midst of it, I had another beautiful child, and I think probably my entire second pregnancy was through depression, except that I wasn't aware of it. No one in my family, no one was aware at all. So when my elder child was 5 and my younger child was almost 3, I actually had to go and see a psychiatrist because I realized that something's wrong with me. My husband was completely supportive, and he also agreed that uh, I had changed. I had changed over the years, and the person that he was seeing every day for the past few years so wasn't the person that he had met initially. So it was at that time we took a leap of faith, and then we did go and see a psychiatrist. And then there it was. There I got an official diagnosis of major depressive disorder or depression. And I just cannot explain what it felt to hear those words, and whether the diagnosis was worse or the actual day-to-day living that I was going through that time, that was worse. Because in society, depression is always seen as a choice. It is seen as something that weak people get because they are not able to handle life. And here I was one of the toughest people I knew, and here I was diagnosed with depression. So obviously there was something wrong with my understanding of depression, and I needed to really understand what it was if I ever hoped to get better. Then for a while, I did take medication. I did take a bit of therapy. I got better. And we moved places. At that time, we used to live in Chennai. So from Chennai, we moved to Delhi. And then I was well enough to taper off my medication. I was completely medication free. I was kind of all right coping up with things. But then life got more stressful, and a few very stressful incidents happened in my life, including my husband facing a life-threatening illness, and that kind of that stress was just a little too much. I don't know what it was, but then again, a year after I had actually made a recovery and I had gone off my medication, I found myself in a really, really dark place again, where I was finding it just difficult getting up in the morning and going about my usual day. So this time I knew, of course, that it's hello darkness, my old friend. It was depression. It was right there. And then again, the whole process started of seeing a psychiatrist, getting my medication, and for the next about 4 years, this time that I'm talking about is, let us, if we go about placing a needle on it, it would be the August or September of 2012. And from then to the August, September of 2016, those 4 years were really, really, really the darkest phase of my life, worse than my, the heart surgery that I had gone through. That was nothing compared to this. This was like a special kind of hell where I had everything in life, but still I just couldn't even breathe the air. Sometimes I used to feel that anxiety was closing up my airways. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't see. I would just keep sweating. And of course, depression was really, really, really bad. So during these 4 years, I was on medication for most part of it. I think I took medication for 3.5 years, different kinds of medication, because I was not getting better. I was having therapy sessions. I was having all these medication, but somehow something was not working for me. And we changed places again. We were in Delhi for a while, and then we shifted to Ahmedabad. Then the change of place helped a little bit in sort of changing up my routine, etc. But it was really, 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 I don't have enough words, although I'm an author and you've heard Mohit say so much about me, but unfortunately I don't have much words to describe what I was going through. And any of you, if you want to know, there is the book, please do read the D Word. I have described in detail everything that was happening to me at that time. Then about somewhere in the middle of this phase, it was June of 2015 that we moved from Ahmedabad to Bangkok, because my husband had got posted to Bangkok. And the move was, a lot of people advised us against it, including one of the psychiatrists I was seeing. He said, don't take her there. She will not come back. This is what my husband was told. But anyways, my husband took a chance. I took a chance on life, because nothing is predicted. And maybe a change of place would have helped me further. That's what we had thought. So my initial days in Bangkok were the same. That's the same dread. I couldn't even cross the street in front of the apartment building. It was like that. I barely was existing from day to day, because there's no other way to describe it. I really wasn't living my life, because I was not able to do anything except just survive, just get up. And a lot of days my husband would just have to nudge me, because during these dark days, sometimes I would not even feel like taking a shower, and I would get out of bed probably only to use the toilet. And that was the extent of my living. Even food was brought to me in bed. And my husband would somehow just nudge me lightly, politely, gently, that come, get up from the bed, maybe just to sit on the chair next to the bed, some movement in your life, something. So some days were that bad. Then, as I was telling you, that I'm and in time wise, we were at June 2015 when we moved from Delhi, from Ahmedabad to Bangkok, and then about 6 months of being there, I started having a lot of unprecedented reactions to the medication. I used to have tremoring in my hands and legs, and I couldn't sleep at night for a month because of the tremors, which would happen at any point of time. So the doctor was not very clear whether it is a reaction to the medication or not. But somehow I had reached that point in life where I just didn't care anymore, because the medication wasn't working. I had been so compliant with everything. And therapy had helped me a bit. Therapy definitely, especially cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT as it is called. That is something that had helped me. And I just went off my medication. And this is something I always tell people, I always advise them, don't do it. It doesn't make any medical sense, any logic. But then I did it because I somehow had a feeling that these tremors are as a result of the medication that I'm taking. And in January 2016, I went off every single bit of medication except the anti-anxiety, which I used to take from time to time when I used to feel very anxious. So the initial 2.5 to 3 months after that were another kind of hell, because I was just beginning to lose that feeling of being numb, and I was beginning to feel my pain even more deeply. And of course, I had a lot of physical symptoms of withdrawal from the medication. But then some miracle happened, and after 3 months, I started getting very small windows of normal mood where I would be like myself. I would feel like, okay, here, this is me. This is how I used to be. This is Shubhrata. This is what she's always been. And very tentatively, and those were very small windows. Maybe I would feel good for 10 minutes in a day, sometime 1 hour in a day. But then I just said, this is my sign. This is my sign to, this is it. I have to get better from here. And then I started building up on those small windows. As I got more energy, it was an up cycle, like more energy led to more activity. Like slowly I started doing swimming again, because I hadn't been swimming for a while. I had been doing no physical activity at all. I'm sure, like I have already shared, that there were days I couldn't even get out of bed. So where was the chance of any kind of sports or physical activity? Sorry. So I started swimming, and I started with yoga, because yoga is something that I always find is a very good practice. I in fact would go on to say that it's a extension of mindfulness, because you have to be really in that moment to hold a pose, or to hold your breath, or whatever it is that you're doing. And of course, for mindfulness meditation, that is something that again helps me. And since I was at home, I was not working, I was just simply sitting there. So I had to sort of give proof of living to myself. And then I just started journaling. Like every day, I would just start writing 3 things that I did on that day. And the 3 things could be anything. Like I sat with my children, I helped them with their homework. I sat with my husband, I read 10 pages of a book, or the small things like that. And slowly, those 3 things went on to 5 things. And I was, wow, I did 5 things today. And those 5 things went on to 7 things. So, okay, I did 7 things today. I lived today. I did 7 things in today. And slowly, with all of this, I think it was around, as I had mentioned earlier as well, August or September of 2016, that a complete shift in my consciousness, in my mind happened, and my brain happened. And probably because my brain, the way it had changed, it started healing again. It started getting better. And that is when I started having hope again. And when I had severe depression, again, the common myths and perceptions are that someone is just very sad. It's not just sadness. It's a complete, because of whatever neural circuits change during depression, whatever wiring of the brain that changes during depression. One of the things that happens is that, at least for me, I used to, I could see everything very dull. The colors were dim and dark. And then when I was getting better, when I was recovery again is gaining functionality. So the colors started appearing bright again. Everything was like a nice pop of color. And things started getting effortless. Like earlier, I had to count my steps from the bed to the toilet. And I didn't have to do that anymore. I had to think 4-5 times about coming out of my room to do anything else. I didn't have to do that anymore. And this is something that I still kind of hold on to, that I try to avoid any meals in bed, because it reminds me of those days. I always make it a point to sit at a proper table and have my meals, because I don't ever want to go back to those really deep, dark days of depression. So this was my story in short. And when I was leaving India for those 3 years that we were in Bangkok, I had never really thought I would ever be able to go back to work, because at that time, just existing, just living, breathing itself was so difficult. But I got better. I wrote the book. In fact, those days of withdrawal that I was talking about, those 3 months, that is when I wrote the D word. And because I had already been doing a lot of research on my condition, because I was just sitting in the bed. So what would I do all day? I would just keep searching. How do I get better? How did I land in this? And how do I get better? How do I claw myself out of this rabbit hole in which I am? And all that research and my own journey I have put into the D word. In fact, the book has two parts. The first part is the information about depression, about mental health, and what you can do to help yourself or a loved one, and all the information about what are the possible causes, triggers, what are the possible courses of the available choices of treatment, and different things that you can do. So these form the first part of the book. And the second part of the book is, of course, about my own story and my own journey through those 10 years. And when I finished writing the book, this was, of course, in March of 2016, and I still had depression. I had not gotten better. But of course, as I told you, that after that, I got better. And 2 years later, I was back at the day I was joining back at North Block is one day I remember with a lot of sense of achievement, probably as much as the day when I joined the civil services for the first time, because it was almost that. So I went back to work full time, and then here I am. I'm working now on deputation. So this has been my journey so far. And apart from my official work, as Mohit said, yes, I do practice mental health advocacy. I keep talking about mental health because somehow in society we don't pay so much of attention to mental health. Very little is known. And the stigma that exists, I say that it's like an Ouroboros, a serpent eating its own tail, because the silence, the stigma makes people silent. It silences their voices. And because people don't speak up, so the stigma kind of perpetuates. So now I have made it my life's mission to normalize these conversations around mental health. I keep talking about it at every single forum I get. And that ways, I thank Mohit for giving me this opportunity twice, because I have used his forum twice for speaking about mental health. And I just hope that there will be a day when I suffered so much because there was little information in society, and fighting the stigma was even tougher than fighting the illness. So what I went through, no one else should have to, because fighting the illness and dealing with it is bad enough. So, and I also want to tell everyone that there is life beyond mental illness. Look at me. I still have anxiety disorder. I do have, and I have recently been diagnosed with something called adult ADHD. I'm not sure whether it's the same as the thing that children get, and whether I had it as a child, but it was diagnosed now. I'm not sure at all. It's just something that I'm sharing, because there should be no stigma around these things. But whatever it is, I still get up in the morning, go to office every day, complete my work, come back, do a little bit of advocacy. And that is mental illness for you. I'm someone who's sitting there with mental illness. You can see me, but then that's it. Let's not put the stigma in mental illness. So Mohit.
Oh, thank you, Shubhrata. Like always, it's always a pleasure to listen to you and also to deep dive into ourselves, that this can happen with any one of us. And especially your book has those 4 very powerful stories when it starts. One is definitely about a girl who has lost her mother and she is in a depression without even knowing it. Then, of course, one is the story of the postpartum, and then a teenager who was
Yes.
who was always a high flyer, always an achiever, and then he loses out because of something that happened to him. So I think anxiety, depression, many at times we don't know about it, but it can happen with any human being, and it's important to live in a very full or a wholesome way of life, which is the way our ancient wisdom used to tell us to have a dinacharya and then stay into the yoga and and perform our meditation. So I think that would have been definitely helpful. We have a couple of questions that have already popped in. So what I will do, so there's one Mr. Raj Shekhar who's from Jharkhand. In the video, you can actually see he's in
Yeah.
hospital. He's COVID and he's still very positive. Good to have this positivity around us. It takes a lot of courage, and with the number of cases rising, it's definitely a challenge. We have a question from Garima, and I would request my colleague Ridhima to open her mic if she would like to ask the question on her own. Garima, why don't you ask your question?
Hi. Thanks,
Hi.
Mohit, for opening it up. And thanks, no, Shubhrata ji. I mean, I was no, telling Mohit that no, I personally feel that it takes a lot, right, to open up, right, on any such forum in such a candid manner. Because all of us, I'm sure, especially I think females, suffer from some sort of no variation of depression at each and every stage. But a lot of times, no, we don't realize, as you have said, or even if we realize, we may fall back into the trap, not thinking that what will the world think, right? But I'm really happy I came. I came up to attending this no discussion, and thank you for writing it. I will for sure pick up your book and read it. One thing that I wish to know, while I didn't know your book mentions about the teenage story, I will go and read that as well. But from your experience and since you're live, I would like to ask you that are there any early symptoms that we should be aware of or being watchful of as parents? Because when kids are growing up, in any case, they would have mood swings, etc. Um, so, any tips, pointers from your side on that would be helpful.
Garima, first of all, thank you very much for all the kind words you said about me. And my entire life's purpose now is to try to make enabling kind of environment where one doesn't have to be bold or strong, etc., or brave to be able to talk about mental illness or mental health for that matter. So that was one thing. And second thing, as you said, women, yes, definitely that also is true that women are twice as likely. This is not just me and you talking, these are statistics, hard, cold statistics, that women are twice as likely to have a mental disorder than men. So that, of course, is there. Then on the issue of children, yes, I thank you for actually raising this issue, because most of us, as I said, we tend to sweep everything under the carpet, that okay, no, depression doesn't exist, anxiety doesn't exist, or mental illness does not exist. But the reality is that most people who, again, see, these are general terms, most people, so I will not be able to say what percent, because there's no research that I have access to. But most people who go on to develop mental disorders as adults would have probably had something before the age of 14.
Okay.
So these are again hard fact statistics. So children do get depression, children do get anxiety, and especially I think at the time of adolescence, where because when we talk about mental disorders, the theory at present is that it's a combination. Who gets it? Someone who is at the intersection, at the some biological factors, some psychological factors, and some sociological factors. So we say biopsychosocial model. So it's difficult to say who will get or who will not get, but children are vulnerable, especially at the time of adolescence, at the time they're hitting puberty. They are vulnerable because their hormones are changing, the body, their internal environment is changing, and of course the external environment too, because the way the world sees them is changing. So in case you notice either the child expresses distress, the child can actually tell you that I'm not feeling good, I'm feeling sad or low, because that could be a symptom. Or you notice changes in the child's behavior, that either the child is a little aggressive, a little angry, because age also children exhibit their depression in different ways. So it could be just excessive anger or rage, or the child is withdrawing. So any change in the child's behavior patterns can be a red flag. It's also normal. See, when children are going through puberty or adolescence, it's also normal for their behavior to change. Does not really signify that something is wrong with them. But if as parents, we know best, we can we can actually make out if the child is actually going through some problem. And in that case, to consult a professional who will be able to guide you whether there is something to worry about or something to take care of. And as always, I would say that when in doubt, err on the side of caution, do consult a professional. If there's nothing wrong, absolutely fine. If there is something, then that will be caught early and you can address it early. So.
Sure. Thanks, no, because I'm always worried as a parent that you shouldn't be sort of putting more thoughts in their mind, right?
No,
Because
no.
yeah, so yeah, no, but no, what you're saying no makes total sense, right?
Yeah.
And I, yeah,
Yeah, I would
Right.
also say that it's these are not the times when you can be guilty of putting thoughts in your child's head, because the
Yeah.
child has enough thoughts in their heads and they have a lot of access to different kinds of material. And
Yeah.
the way, it's my personal thought, I'm also the mother of two teenagers, so it's always a good idea to be very open about these things. Talk about it. See, if you're not ill, no one can make you ill. Just talking about fever make you have fever. You don't.
Mm,
You will only get fever if you have an infection of some kind.
mm,
So it's the same with mental illness. It has to be there in your brain. If it is not there, no one can put the thoughts there. And it's a good thing if the children have doubts, if they have queries. It's always good to talk it out so that the child doesn't, suffer in silence.
alone, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll know that they can come and talk.
Yes.
Great. Thanks, and I wish you good
Thank
luck,
you
and I
very
hope to succeed in your purpose.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Shubhrata, our next question is very similar to what we were discussing yesterday when I asked you how much do you think for an organization reading and engaging employees is very important. This question is from Trisha. If Trisha, you are there, we can open your mic. You can ask your question directly, but I will set the context of your question, which purposefully at City Book Leaders we do for very large organizations where we engage large set of employee base with books as the medium. And the way, interestingly, I was telling you, Shubhrata, we do it with interest specific levels. We don't change the interest level of employees. So we don't take books related to mental wellness to someone who may not like it. Or say, for example, we curate these sessions specifically. And Trisha, I think that's exactly what Shubhrata may be able to add more value, because at NITI Aayog, she's also leading up one of those verticals and discussions. So I'm just opening your mic. Why don't you please ask your question? She's from your hometown, Shubhrata, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, ma'am. Thanks for taking the session, and I'm really happy that people are coming out and talking about it. As this generation, this is a privilege that our older generation is already talking about it. So, ma'am, my question is, how do we help employees? Say, for example, big organizations, they are actively looking at what kind of programs they can have, what kind of literature they can have, how can they engage employees, and start looking at how mental health can also be a part of the health and wellness policies, which are already very strongly formed, but doesn't have a space for mental illness right now. So if there's something that you can help us guide with, I think many other organizations will also start including it. Thanks, ma'am.
Thanks for the question, Trisha, and it's something that needs a lot of thought. But still, I'll just share my first thoughts on this issue with you. Now, employee wellness is something that companies always look at. I mean, it's they with physical wellness as well as their mental wellness. But unfortunately, and I'm just saying this in a general sense, it's not a particular organization or something. Our focus is always on the productivity, that you want to keep your employees a little more productive, so you're taking care of the physical health and the mental health. My approach has always been different. My approach has always been that place the employee at the center, the focus, because all said and done, that person is a human being. And mental health is not just a question of privilege. It's something. It's a human right. It's a basic human right. Just like every individual has the basic right to good health, physical health, so every individual also has the right to good mental health. Now, how can an organization enhance that? So one of the ways that any organization can do it is by having a more conducive environment where the employees, their mental health is taken care of. They feel safe. They can open up about, first of all, don't put so much of stress that an employee gets mental health issues. But if someone has mental health issues, it can be anywhere, because as I said, we don't know biopsychosocial, it can be on account of any of these issues. And mental health, mental distress, and mental disorder all are different. So any organization would obviously try to keep the employee on the wellness part of the spectrum, keep the employee mentally healthy, and if there is some distress, address it so that it does not translate into illness. The employee does not move from on that spectrum from the wellness part to the illness part. So that can be done through a more open environment. And that's why we have to keep talking about mental health. We have to normalize the conversations. The employee should feel empowered enough to come up and talk and say that, okay, I am going through this emotional distress. I am not feeling so good. So that somehow goes missing, not just in organizations, but see, organizations are all subsets of society. And when society itself places so much of stigma on mental health itself, forget about disorders and illness. I mean, the moment that someone opens up their mouth to say that I'm not feeling good, see, today I'm feeling a little low, then people are mental hai kya? That's how we say that. Has this person gone mad, or are you going mad? Or only mad people go to therapists and psychiatrists. So that is the conversations that we need to change. That if someone is feeling distressed, and that's what I said, this needs a lot of thought, because a lot of times employees are not comfortable speaking up, especially in the workspace. Like, even if you provide a counselor or psychologist or a therapist, I am not sure whether you'll have many takers for that. So books, yes, definitely books are a good idea, but there has to be more. There has to be a lot more effort than that.
Thank you, Shubhrata. I think it all needs a kind of empathy and a respect for this, which should come from our initial days of upbringing. It's very, very important, I guess. And also the organizational culture definitely matters a lot. Our next question is from a very dear friend, Sapan, who himself is a emotional wellness coach. And despite coming from a corporate career, he has completely made a shift to wellness coaching as his way of life. Sapan, would you like to open your mic and ask your question, please? You there? Just a second. Yes,
I could unmute now. Thanks so much, Mohit. Thanks, Shubhrata. This is such a wonderful to listen to you. And again, I think especially my biggest takeaway was the socio-psychological and the biological factors. I mean, mostly we connect depression only from the psychological part and possibly miss out the multiple aspects of it. So thanks for bringing it up. I'm looking forward to reading your book. One curiosity that came up was you mentioned about women being susceptible to depression almost 2 times, and this comes as a bit of surprise because I mean our general perception is that women are much better at not only connecting with their emotions but also expressing it. So what could be the factors which could be making women more vulnerable to it? Any quick thoughts?
I think men is the biggest factor.
Okay, apart from that.
Okay. So I'll just take that to elaborate a bit on what is depression. So contrary to, as you said, society thinks that it's just an emotional problem and it's someone who becomes sad, etc., etc. Now, let's go back to the basic human biology. Okay, any human being has, how do you gauge their mental state, or how does the mind work? Thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. And all of these originate in the brain, whether these are conscious thoughts or unconscious thoughts. There are the neurological correlates. You have your neurons, you have your neurotransmitters, and you have the firing of the neurons, like the impulses go, the electrical activity goes from one neuron to the other. And then over a period of time, how do we learn tasks to do them automatically? We through the formation of these neural pathways, that there are certain things that whenever you see your child, your mind lights up, because those neural pathways are activated. The firing takes place in those circuits by themselves. And then, of course, as we all know, that the brain and the nervous system, they also operate on 2 bases, like the autonomic nervous system, which happens by itself, that those nerves and those muscles, etc., move by themselves. And then, of course, this conscious thought, where you actually decide that you want to pick up a cup of coffee. But then even for that, like, you decide that you want to pick up the cup of coffee, but the actual process of lifting the coffee is done automatically by the brain and the nervous system. that your muscles move, only those muscles move which are needed to pick up the cup of coffee and not anything else. So whenever someone has, let us see, depression, major depressive disorder, that's what it's called, or anxiety disorder or bipolar disorder, any kind of mental disorder, obviously there is something which has gone wrong with the brain and the nervous system, that the brain is not working in the usual normal. When I say normal, I mean the normal distribution curve in which you can place any kind of population on any parameter. So the brain starts behaving in a disordered fashion, which is not ordered, which is not the way it has been functioning. So this is really, really, really important. That this understanding somehow goes completely missing from all our discourse on mental health, because ultimately at some level mental health is also physical health. Now that is why when we talk about the biopsychosocial model, so there are some changes which happen in the brain, and those have been documented, a few of those, because neuroscience and this aspect of mental health, this aspect of the neuroscience or the neurological correlates of thought, behavior, emotions is kind of at an infancy stage, because earlier we didn't have the means to look inside the brain to see what is happening. Slowly we came up with all these imaging techniques, your PET scans, your MRIs, and mostly these were used for looking at the structural parts of the brain. Like if someone wanted to see, is there a tumor inside the brain? What is happening inside the brain? Is there calcification in the brain? Then these techniques, these scans were used to look inside the brain. Slowly now neuroscientists are looking at the functional aspects as well. That's why we have something called the functional MRI, that when a person is performing a certain function, what is happening inside the brain? Which parts of the brain are being activated? Where do you find the electrical activity? So this is helping the neurologists and neuroscientists have a better understanding of the working of the brain, and definitely with the aim of understanding mental disorders better to help people. So this is still, as I said, at its infancy. It's happening. There will be a lot of, there will be years before, there's a fixed, a step-by-step process by which someone can work out how someone got depression or did not get depression. But we do know that there are genetic factors, there are biological factors like hormones, postpartum hormones, they affect women. If you talk to any woman, she'll tell you that before she has her cycles, there's 2-3 days of premenstrual syndrome, and then actually premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD. That's also something that a lot of women face. So looking at the number of changes that a woman's body goes through in those years of her life, starting from menarche to menstrual cycles every month, to pregnancy, to delivery, postpartum hormones, then menopause. So who knows, maybe these are the biological factors that could be predisposing women more towards depression. That's number one. Also in terms of psychological factors as well as sociological factors. When we live in a patriarchal society, when women, children, female fetuses are not even allowed to be born. See, that is the kind of society we live in, and we can close our eyes to it, but it is what it is. So a woman has to fight to get so many things in all through her life. And that also definitely the stress factor, because the stress, the cortisol secretion that happens, the stress hormone, that also plays a part in development of these disorders. Now, at this forum, in this short time, and I'm again not a neurologist or a professional, I will not be able to give you, but if you look up, there are a lot of studies which will tell you that stress is a major factor that contributes not just to physical illnesses, but also mental illnesses. So maybe all of these factors, the bio, psycho, and social factors are magnified for women, and the changes that happen in the brains of women is much more than probably what happens to men. I hope that answers the question.
I'm sure Sapan would have definitely taken something very, very particular out of it. And altogether, the hubris of the men, not exactly the men, but the hubris, the ego that the man carries, that I am the doer of all the good things in the world. I think that also brings in a lot of challenges in terms of the woman's life. And you can relate to
Patriarchy, hence. Patriarchy.
Yeah. Though we started with something else, though I have got many of those questions, and you might need to write a volume 2 of your book.
That
taking
is
this
why.
I will give the chance to Rajam Shankarji. She's a very remarkable personality. She has written the book Healing with Ragas. She herself is a healer, and she's a Sanskrit learner with us in our Sanskrit batches. Rajamji, I would request now you to ask a question, please, from Hyderabad. You can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Namaskar, Mohitji. And Subhadraji, I heard what you have presented, and I'm a music therapist. And as you said, it's not a question I am putting here today. As you said, many people with depression, especially when as part of my music therapy, I have handled many of these ADHD related, problems, autism spectrum, and menopausal women, and various other categories. And some of the students whom I had come across they are not into any of these earlier mentioned group. Some of them, when they come to my music class, when we used to have regular music class also apart from my therapy sessions, and the mothers will tell me that this child has got attention deficiency, even though she is not in the category of in the autism spectrum, but she has got a slow learner or attention deficiency. So the mother tells me privately in the phone or somewhere, she meets and tells me that kindly take care of her and do whatever therapy is possible, but don't allow others to know about it.
Yeah.
Because as you said, that remains with that, they think that something mental was happening to this child, that's why she went for a therapy, she went for this thing. As you said that going to a psychiatrist, any mental health, they don't take it as which can happen to even a normal people. They always put it like something different, and suppose it comes out, leaks out, and when the girl grows up or something, that remains with her, that that she went for something. That's all. What something? It's something very a normal thing, like slow learner or not able to concentrate. Attention span is very low. Very less. That it's not taken as a normal case. They always think that something was wrong with this girl. That's why she went for the therapy. And this is what I have noticed in a society in common. As you said, that many depression cases I have handled, where a lot of things, backstabbing and losing somebody very close by, and they went into depression, and menopausal ladies to the extent that they wanted to commit suicide, and I have taken care of them and all. So I have seen this immediately, that stamp, like I must say, that's like more like a stamp. Yeah, there was some mental problem with the health. They won't take it that it may be just there's something that needed a support. So let it be as a musical tune or musical ragas, because I handle with all genre of music. So I have helped them and all, and I tell people there's nothing wrong with the person. That's absolutely, even they themselves start thinking that something is terribly bad with me, that's why I needed to go for a psychiatrist. मैं पागल हो रही हूँ, ऐसे something. Then I say no. We just like we have a vitamin deficiency or something, where you need something to be added. That's all. It's like a supplement.
Yeah, Rajanji, I will just like to bring to your notice that Shubhrata has an important meeting and she has to leave in a minute or so. Okay. So yeah,
no
we could only buy 45 minutes from her today.
Sure.
So, Shubhrata, anything that you'd like to say, or as a parting thoughts and something that people can take from us?
Just, I also wanted to say thanks to Rajam Shankarji for the work that she's doing, because she's also providing therapy of so many different kinds to people who really need help. And at the end, I would just like to thank everyone for listening to me patiently. Thanks to you, Mohit, for giving me this opportunity again. And for anyone who is going through any kind of mental disorder or simply feeling distressed, because COVID has brought on this thing. And incidentally, I have had COVID as well. And when I had COVID, more than the physical symptoms, I think those 15 days of isolation locked up in a room, that was much more difficult, and the its effect on my mental health was much more difficult than, and the fear that I may have passed it on to my family. So these are the times that we are living in, and whether it's now, this will pass and we will all get back to this normal way of living. But please remember that if you're going through anything, absolutely there is no harm in seeking help for it. Don't feel ashamed. I always keep saying this: I have mental illness, but I'm not ashamed. It's not a choice I have made. It's something that happened to me. Just like people fall ill with physical illnesses, so people fall ill with mental illnesses. So don't feel ashamed. Don't let the stigma and the society norms silence you. Use your voice, speak up for yourself, speak up for people like you, and seek help, get better. And that's all there should be to mental illness: managing it, getting better. No place for stigma in today's society.
So like you can build your body, you can actually build your mind as well, and be
Absolutely.
easy with that. You just engage into better hobbies, better habits, and the good company. In the end, it's always about the good company. So I would like to say thanks to this good company that has been here today with us. Thank you very much, Shubhrata. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and we look forward to have more such interactions. Keep spreading the joy, and everyone who joined in, thank you very much. Have a blessed Sunday. Enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shubhrata. Bye bye.
Bye.